Mighty companion, this is Earl Purdy with you now, getting ready to cover a Course in Miracles lesson with you, lesson 74, lesson 74, lesson 74, lesson 74, which is there is no will but God's, 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 there is no will but love's, there is no will but love's. The idea for today, there is no will but God's. The idea for today, there is no will but God's, can be regarded as the central thought toward which all our exercises are directed toward the idea. All of our exercises are directed toward the idea that there is no will but God's. God's will is the only will. When you have accepted that God's will is the only will, and God's will for you is perfect happiness, you have recognized that your will is God's will, because you want happiness for yourself too. The belief that conflict is possible has gone. Peace has replaced the strange idea that you are torn by conflicting goals. As an expression of the will of God, you have no goal but God's. There is great peace in today's idea there is no will but God's. And the exercises for today are directed towards finding God's will. The idea itself is totally true. Therefore, the idea cannot give rise to illusions and fears and false ideas. Without illusions, without false ideas, conflict is impossible without false ideas. Let us try to recognize this today and experience the peace this recognition brings, that truth brings only peace. Begin the longer practice periods by repeating these thoughts several times slowly, with firm determination to understand what these thoughts mean, and to hold these thoughts in mind. There is no will but God's. I cannot be in conflict. Then spend several minutes in adding some related thoughts, such as, I am at peace. Nothing can disturb me. My will is God's. My will and God's are one. God wills peace for me, God's creation. During this introductory phase, be sure to deal quickly with any conflict thoughts that may cross your mind. Tell yourself immediately, there is no will but God's. These conflict thoughts are meaningless. Tell yourself, when you have any thoughts of conflict and fear in your mind, there is no will but God's. These conflict thoughts are meaningless. If there is one area of conflict in your life that seems particularly difficult to resolve, single out that one area that seems particularly difficult to resolve. Single that part out. Single that conflict out for special consideration. In other words, think about the thing that you feel conflict about briefly, but very specifically. Identify the particular person or persons and the situation or situations involved, and tell yourself, there is no will but God's. I share God's will with God. My conflicts about whatever this is cannot be real. There is no will but God's. I share God's will with God. My conflicts about whoever this is cannot be real. That means that it cannot be everlasting. It cannot be constant. After you have cleared your mind in this way, close your eyes and try to experience the peace to which your reality entitles you. Sink into the peace your reality entitles you, and feel peace closing around you. Now, there may be some temptation to mistake these attempts for withdrawal, but the difference is easily detected. If you are succeeding, you will feel a deep sense of joy and an increased alertness, rather than a feeling of drowsiness and enervation. Joy characterizes peace. By the experience of joy, you will recognize that you have reached peace. If you feel yourself slipping off into withdrawal, quickly repeat the idea for today and try again. If you feel yourself drifting off, say the idea again for today. There is no will but God's, and then try again. Do this as often as necessary. There is definite gain in refusing to allow retreat into withdrawal. There's a definite gain in refusing to allow retreat into withdrawal. even if you do not experience the peace you seek. In the shorter practice periods, which should be undertaken at regular and predetermined intervals today, say to yourself, there is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. Then try to find what you are seeking. A minute or two every half an hour, with eyes closed if possible, would be well spent in this today. So let's say our lesson, and let me chant our lesson for about a minute to you. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will, there is no will, there is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will, there is no will, there is no will but God's. I seek God's peace today. There is no will but love's. I seek love's will today. There is no will but love's. I seek love's will today. There is no will but love's. I seek love's will today. That's the same as saying there is no will, there is no will, there is no will but God's. There is no will but God's will. 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 That is your lesson for today. Forward these videos to as many people as you can that would benefit from them. Check me out at www.earlpurdy.com and let peace and love extend from my mind and heart to yours.